colleagues, dear friends, welcome to Bonn. Welcome to the Bonn Institute's first festival on constructive dialogue and journalism, and to the first Be Future Festival. Wow! We're so happy to have you with us today. Why are we here? Let me tell you a personal story. I'm a single mother of 2 young adults, and at the time this can be a bit of a challenge. And about 5 years ago, I was sitting with my kids in front of the television in our living room. And we were watching the evening news because I really want them to grow up as informed citizens, right? So at some point, my daughter, who was 12 years old at the time, she just jumped up and she started to yell. She's so angry, and she said, "Am I really expected to watch this? This is all about catastrophes and conflicts and wars. I've really had enough." And she just stormed out of the living room. Her older brother and I were kind of speechless. And this incident really made me think, like 5 years ago. I was heading an innovation team at Germany's international broadcaster Deutsche Welle at the time. And we were like all about digitization, new platforms, technologies, algorithms, tell me about it. So it was a very exciting time. And then there's my daughter actually detesting the products we were working on so hard every day. I had suddenly read the Reuters Digital News Report, which in 2017 for the very first time brought up the new phenomenon of news avoidance, telling us that about 1/3 of the world's adults were actually avoiding the news from time to time, but I hadn't paid so much attention until this very moment, when it became very personal. It was different. It really, really opened my eyes, because that was a person I deeply cared about. And she actually didn't appreciate what I was doing. And that's exactly the point, isn't it? We are working for actual people. We are not just working for anonymous users or audiences. We're working for real people. And these individuals can actually choose whether to consume the information we have prepared for them, or to switch off, to get their information elsewhere, or to not get any information at all. So throughout the 20 years that I've spent now in journalism, I have listened and participated in endless debates about the future of journalism. And I have always been excited about the new opportunities that technology, that digitization had to offer. However, at some point, I really came to wonder whether we were maybe distracting ourselves by overemphasizing our look on what technology had to offer. I really believe that technology is one part of digitization, but digitization is much more than that. So don't get me wrong. These technological advancements have been very important to deal with, and all of us, including you, have worked really, really hard to digitize legacy news organizations, or even create new ones, digital native news organizations. But that was just part of the job. That was just the first step. The digital revolution transcends technology. And we must now ask ourselves, how can we remain relevant to these people out there in really challenging, complex times of conflicts and wars and the climate crisis? How can we navigate complex landscapes without overwhelming our audiences and ourselves as journalists? News avoidance is at an all-time high. Trust in journalism is at a low. And journalists themselves are grappling with burnout and anxieties more than ever before. It's time to understand that on top of the technological transformation, we now need to transform journalism on the content level, on the human level. We need to figure out how to be helpful for the people, because helpfulness means relevance. We also need to figure out how to stay sane in an era of perpetual conflict. As we fail this, we fail at serving the people we're here for. And again, these people are not anonymous audiences or nameless users. They are our neighbors, your friends, they're voters, they're politicians, they're real people. They are my daughter. They are all of our kids. They are the future. Be Future is a festival with a purpose. To make journalism better for our societies and more successful for our industry. I cannot tell how excited I am that so many of you, and there are many more outside and yet to come, that you are all here. We got more than 300 proposals from people from all over the world to participate as speakers in the festival. We were really overwhelmed by this sort of interest, and it really shows that there's such a huge demand in having this conversation. Many of you, I know this from many conversations and email exchanges I had in the last couple of months. They kind of feel isolated in their respective media organizations. That you try to be better, you try to do better, and sometimes it's hard because, the constructive compass is not engraved in any newsroom yet, every newsroom yet. But now you can see how many you already are. So I think this is a great start to really start a change, and you are the role models, you are here. So please take the opportunity to get into dialogue, listen to as many speakers as possible, get to know as many new people as possible. Everyone here has got a story to tell, has got a good example to share, has got experiences that might be valuable for you. So take on this opportunity. Before I close, I'd like to express my gratitude to our outstanding Bonn Institute team. Really quite I'm getting a bit emotional here, as you can probably see, because it's such a gift to be able to work with so amazing, talented, and devoted people. We only had 6 months to pull this off, and it's been a huge amount of work. So thank you so much, my dear Bonn Institute colleagues, for being such a fantastic and hardworking team. Additionally, I'd like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to our sponsors, notably the State Chancellery of North Rhine-Westphalia and the Federal Agency for Civic Education, along with the Rheinische Post Mediengruppe and the Generalanzeiger Bund. Without their support, the festival would not have been possible. I would also like to acknowledge my friend Markus Beckedahl, founder of netzpolitik.org and co-founder of Europe's largest digital society festival, the Republika. He has graciously shared all his experiences and knowledge to support us. Thank you, Markus. Where are you? So welcome on stage. Thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful couple of days here in Bonn. It's a beautiful little city. I think it's a good place for a festival. I hope you enjoy your time. We've even organized the weather for you. We're Germans. I hope I get a chance to get to know many of you and chat and understand why you're here, what you're up to. I'm really curious to get to know as many as possible. Have a fantastic time, and now Markus, the stage is yours.
Yeah, good morning. I'm not used to speak English in the morning after breakfast, but I tried. 1 year ago, Ellen proposed the idea to me that we could do a festival in Bonn. And I really got excited about it because I was born in Bonn, spent half of my life in Bonn. And I understood it would be work in Bonn to have such a festival, but not in Berlin, my now hometown. And so we started to find partners. And in the beginning, we thought about, let's do it in some pubs in the Altstadt. We might find some small venues. And then we ask around and we run into so many open doors through the city. And for me, it was very nice to sit in Berlin. Sometimes I went to Bonn. But to now, all the venues of my youth, like the Stadtbibliothek and the cinemas and the bookstores, we can use because the people, the institutions behind that are totally in of our idea. And half a year ago, we really started to get into the program, and we were totally excited how much we got from you, from our community, how many people really wanted to participate. And then in the beginning you think, we might have too much venues. And then 3 months later you think, we need more venues. And at the end we even got a bar, a Kneipe, Sion Kneipe. What was the idea at the beginning? Because we needed some more venues. So for today, we expected around 200 people. Now it might be 500 over the day, which is also totally surprising. And I don't want to speak more because Kübra is now coming to the stage with more content. I like to thank you all and get connected, do networking, debate with each other, get informed, and come back. Bye.
As you already heard the name, Kübra Gümüşay is the next person to speak on the stage. She's the author of the book Speaking and Being, which examines how languages dictate politics and the way we think. She is also a member of the Bonn Institute's Board of Trustees, and she will hold a keynote about why journalism needs diverse perspectives, which I find a very important and interesting topic. Welcome!
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for organizing this conference. For the past 3 years, I've been researching so-called real utopias and alternative futures. And today, this conference serves as a real utopia, opening the minds of people to what is possible. And I'm sure many of you have had the experience of, people actually putting constructive journalism off as something that is not truly possible or not valuable or even something that won't be sustainable. And today, seeing all of you and you seeing each other, you being here at this conference, hopefully manifests that it's not only possible, but it's pressing, urgent, and has to happen everywhere. So today I want to talk about the necessity for a plurality and diversity of perspectives. And I want to start with a word. This word is called pourpourri. Pourpourri, roughly translated, means the force with which a mushroom pushes itself away from Earth towards the sky overnight. This word is beautiful and meaningful. Not only because there is a very specific word for a very specific phenomenon in nature, but because this perspective, this word, holds a certain perspective. Because this word comes from the language of the Potawatomi, and in the grammar of the Potawatomi, there are not only personal pronouns such as he, she, it, or many more pronouns that allow humans to take on the perspective of earth, water, plants, trees, and insects. So this word, the beauty about this word is that you watch this phenomena not from the perspective of a human, but from the perspective of the earth, watching this mushroom pushing itself away from earth towards the sky, passing by humans to believe themselves to be the center of the universe. How would we debate differently and discuss and report differently about, say, climate justice if it was normal for us to inhabit the perspective of mushrooms, of water, of trees, of mountains? And to dive deeper into this, I want to invite you into the Museum of Language. The Museum of Language is an analogy, an invitation to imagine language like a physical space. Imagine a huge museum. In this Museum of Language, you can find everything you know from outside the world. Faraway places, near places, different ideas and ideologies, things of the past, the present, the future. You can find different plants and trees and insects and mountains and waters and rivers and ponds. You can find fictional lives and real lives. All of these things are curated in the Museum of Language. They are given titles and categories and definitions. You can walk through this Museum of Language and travel through time and space and explore all the things I've mentioned. In this Museum of Language, there are two types of people, the unlabeled and the labeled. The unlabeled are those who fit to the norms within the respective societies they live in to a degree that they don't need a name anymore. Those people can travel through the Museum of Language and explore all of the things I've just mentioned. They never run against the walls of the Museum of Language. They never wonder about the things that are missing in the Museum of Language, because those who curate this Museum of Language, those who decide what comes in and what doesn't, what is named how, what is defined how, what is standing next to what, are also unlabeled. So these people are walking through the Museum of Language, not really being conscious of the fact that someone else has curated that world to them. The privilege of the unlabeled becomes even more visible when we look at the labeled. The labeled are, in one way or another, different from the norm in that respective society. In the eyes of the unlabeled, the labeled are weird, different, somehow not easy to understand. But the unlabeled want to understand the labeled. So they give them a name, a category, and this category builds a cage, a glass cage within the Museum of Language. And then they also give them a definition based on what the unlabeled find interesting about the labeled. And this definition defines how wide and big this glass cage in the Museum of Language is. So some people in this Museum of Language are living in glass cage walls. And they sometimes run against those glass cage walls because they don't really fit their category or their definition. This causes pain, so they retrieve and walk at maximum distance to the definitions of their category and degenerate into caricatures of themselves, into stereotypes. Others, however, keep walking against those glass cage walls again and again and again. They start to create cracks, their foreheads start bleeding, and they almost make their way out and are allowed to breathe in the air of freedom when the unlabeled are wondering about why they don't fit into this category, and they now start to inspect every inch of their body, the way they are living and loving, and the way they believe, and the way they conduct their lives, the texture of their skin, the texture of their hair. All of these things are being scrutinized and analyzed and inspected. They cut through their flesh again and again, every layer to find out, oh, do you bleed just like us? Do you hurt just like us? And the labeled allow this inspection to happen because they hope that at the end of this inspection they will be granted freedom. But at the end of this inspection, they're not being granted freedom, but introduced into a slightly larger glass cage in the Museum of Language. And some are now happy about this slightly larger space. Others, however, again, on their first day, run against the glass cage walls. I presented this analogy at a conference, a law conference, and together with me on stage was a law professor, and she talked about the Anti-Discrimination Act in Germany and how old white men were one of the groups of people who profited enormously from this act because they would sue companies, organizations for age discrimination and receive relatively high compensations. And in the audience, people started to argue about old white men, and then someone raised their arm, an old white man. And he described his discomfort about the way people were talking about old white men in this room. And then the discussion got even more heated, and that's when I intervened. I said, this person, this human being, is being used to be seen as a complex human being with a complex past, present, and future, with different talents and weaknesses and ideas and characteristics. All of a sudden, instead of just being who he is, he's now seen as the representative of an entire group of people. All of a sudden, maybe for the first time in his life, he knows what it means to stand up for another person, but not be seen. Speak, but not be heard. Maybe for the first time in his life, he realizes what it means to not just be yourself, but be seen as a representative of an entire group of people. Instead of doing what you would have done normally, you're now busy trying to understand what the other people are doing that you were put into the same category as. Trying to understand their behavior, explain their behavior. Instead of just being who you are, you're now busy trying to prove that you don't fit the negative stereotypes about your category. Instead of just being who you are, you're now in conversations trying to prove that you're not sexist, not racist, etc. Hoping that at one point during the conversation, you might reach a point where your counterpart sees a fellow human being. Maybe. Maybe for the first time in his life, he experienced something that the others I shared the stage with didn't know any different for their whole lives. What does that say about us? What does that say about categories? What does that say about language? Those rooms at the Museum of Language are necessary, but they turn into cages when we use those tools, when we use language, when we use information, when we use knowledge, within the illusion that we know it all, that there's no other valid perspective on whatever we're describing. If we, with absolutism, describe an entire group of people, with the illusion of knowing who someone is simply because we've put them into the correct category, the correct definition. This illusion of knowing it all, the inherent lack of humility, is what turns rooms into cages. This is what locks the doors. This is why people are suffocating behind the categories they've been put into. This is how polarization is happening. Constructive journalism is basically, in simple words, the practice of humility, trying to offer perspectives and trying to do the impossible by bringing them together. What does it mean to bring perspectives together? To explain this, I want to use an example, an analogy that you might be familiar with, and it exists in many philosophical traditions, from Sufi Islamic traditions to Indian philosophy. And that is the image of a dark room, and in this dark room there's a huge elephant, and then you invite people into the room. They all are supposed to describe what an elephant is. And some say elephants are long and soft. Others say elephants are thin and hairy. And someone else says they are very heavy and leathery. All of these things are simultaneously true. However, if any one of those people would claim to know the absolute truth, if they were to universalize their limited perspective and claim to know it all, not only would all the other perspectives be oppressed, but we would also miss the opportunity to put them together to clearly see what there is. To adapt this to our newsrooms, let's use the example of racist police violence. There could be two perspectives on this topic. One could be,
I trust the police. This institution represents security and peace to me. And another perspective could be, this very same institution represents violence and racism to me, and death. Those two conflicting perspectives are simultaneously true to each person. What we observe today is how these perspectives are supposed to fight against each other, and we ask who speaks the real truth, when in fact, we could bring those perspectives together and ask other questions. When this institution of the police is not allowing everyone to feel safe and secure, one, can it actually provide peace and security to everyone? Two, are there alternatives to live in peace and security within a society other than the institution of the police? But we don't even get to these questions because we're stuck at the point of whether the problem exists or not. And the very same problem we observe when we discuss climate justice, social justice, racism, sexism, you name it. What constructive journalism's offering is multi-perspectivity, the art of bringing them together, and not to fall into the trap of, well, there is a multitude of perspectives, you just choose one. But the art of bringing them together by contextualizing them. Yes, an elephant might have beautiful and long eyelashes, but it may be irrelevant to the point of whether or not they are dangerous or heavy. The art of constructive journalism is practicing with humility, understanding our limitedness, understanding that we are an inherent necessity to give a platform to perspectives that can actually allow us to have a more complete, more holistic view of what there is. The art of constructive journalism is contextualizing. The art of constructive journalism is to also show how the problems we're describing are solved elsewhere, to give a more complete, more beautiful, more multifaceted, more mosaic-like perspective onto the world, to allow the readers to fully embed themselves in the world, to curiously learn to use a Swiss word, be gewundrig, a beautiful merge of the words, to wonder and be curious. Thank you.